And not too bad. Much smoother entry throughout it this time, as long as we're taking our fights slowly here, not too many enemies at once, and not letting those constrictions completely screw us over. We should be okay in the long run here. Not too bad. I think I've pretty much committed to the unarmed combat shindig here, even though I should definitely, much like every other skill in my entire repertoire here, I should really get that training some more. We're hitting the stage in the game where we do, or will need more skill than what we currently have in order to keep up with our enemy's defensive capabilities, for sure. Okay, let's take all of you upstairs. There's no need to drag this out and make it more risky than it needs to be. Perfect. Let's see, ID scrolls. I guess we don't really need to be picking up ID scrolls anymore, so we'll hop into our auto pickup settings and let's turn those bad boys off. Perfect. Again, it might be nice to get an acquirement scroll. I'm very curious what would show up at this stage in the game. Have a decent number of answers to problems already, so it might be nice to see what else we could tack onto those and continue to just snowball as much as we possibly can here. Again, our reflection is looking pretty good with the tower shielding values here. Seems to be hitting slightly more often than it was the first time we were here. Also glad that still works with the sharpshooters. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, if just because of the fact that they use portal projectile a lot. In fact, I guess they wouldn't bother wasting magic points maybe when they're at range and they have a clear line of vision. But does reflection work against portal projectile? Because it'd be kind of cool if it didn't, right? Because if you reflect a missile, if it just pops into existence next to you, it probably wouldn't go towards the caster, right? It would probably just flop on the ground. Or I guess still go flying off in whatever direction the other vector came in from, rather. Just because it would still have the velocity of a full shot, since that's how the spell works and all that. It's very important that we weigh out the physics of all these things in my fantasy world video games. Very important to me at the very least. But I'm going to buy Fear Scrolls and Summoning Scroll just out of hat here. Almost no doubt in my mind. Happy to see them. And what else have we got? Enchant Armor I'll probably buy. But I'm a bit more willing to hold off. It's just one AC point versus who knows what else we might find here. Like the Crown of Diro Vepreva. Huh. Resistance to electricity and see invisible. So that would replace like this ring, which also gives us willpower. So probably wouldn't. I'll mark it because it's kind of a fun item. But not likely. And definitely not. Okie dokie. Doesn't mean that I will head back up to this shop here and let's buy that Enchant Armor Scroll. Could buy more curing potions, but don't really need to right off the cuff here. Could wait and see. Also, I have 3 Enchant Armor Scrolls. Probably should have been using those bad boys. Turns out it's not just 1 AC. It is in fact 3. But that's all good. Managed to realize before we died. At least it wasn't our final death screen that had to teach us that little fact. And perfect. As long as we have the willpower, none of those fancy spellcasting naga are too much of an issue for us. And we can just have our way through most of this. Perfect. Even hitting experience level 18, which you'd love to see. Another little bit of a statistical boost, as well as just a boost in my morale. Oh, and hello, Jorgren. Let us probably call in some help. We should be able to take you on no problem, but there's almost no reason not to bring in a friend. Unless it's an enemy, of course. Should have known. We could use a scroll of teleport. I mean, we can probably take you on. Malmutate at least doesn't mutate us, though it of course does cause some degeneracy on its own. Alternatively, we could double down and Greater Servant of McCleb again. See how that treats us. In fact, I don't hate that idea. As we get, okay, rehabilitated once by that son of a gun. Oh, and they also might others, so Jorgrun has become very mighty all of a sudden. That's funny. Can I hit both of you? Oh, so sad. I can. I feel sorry for you two. Should be able to make some solid work, but apparently less than I thought. Let us continue stacking on all the potential solutions we have to problems. Keeping it slow here, of course, because of Jorgrun's Iron Shot. I guess can almost kill us. Luckily, AC does a little bit to help us out in that regard. Though less so now, as he continues to slap away. Let's see, can I net you? 52% chance to hit? Not fantastic, but I'll do it. Jorgrun is one of the most irritating uniques for human fire elementalists. You usually need to use invisibility, lig, and resistance if your willpower is not snuff. No, definitely absolutely brutal. Especially, I have a specific like cringe reaction whenever I see Jorgrun, if just because I'm used to playing as gargoyles a lot of the time. And so it definitely is, yeah, a whole nother ball game in that regard too. Unfortunately, this is getting closer than I otherwise might like. Can LRD the wall next to us. Can also just Iron Shot us, which hurts. But I'm gonna... Perfect. Take one step. Whew. Managed to get the kill just in time. Probably should have thought about that one a little bit more. Maybe could have used up... Oops. Some more resources just to ensure that I didn't have any regrettable outcomes, because we've had far too many of those in my history. But at the end of the day, I guess it worked. So let's clock that away in the brain for next time, and maybe try and be a little bit more cognizant of when we're potentially one hit away from death. We should always take the extra steps, right? Far too often I convince myself that I'm feeling lucky. And I'm oftentimes right, but not always. And that's the real kicker there. You only have to not be lucky once for it all to come crumbling down. Okie dokie. Let's bring you upstairs if we can. Perfect. Didn't get constricted immediately. As for the rest of you, please do swarm me. Don't mind a few black mambas. Maybe I should have minded a little bit more than I did, but all is well in the end. Still had plenty of turns left to panic and cause alarm and find other solutions, including just the sheer number of fear scrolls that we managed to pick up, which is absolutely fantastic. Let's see, that invocations is getting pretty close to a comfortable point. Greater Servant of McCleb being at 10% fail is probably good enough for the time being, because I should again start training some of my personal offensive capabilities, especially since we don't use that ability for every fight, but we do pretty much use our own combat skills for every encounter that we've come across. So probably a good investment, to say the least. Hello, friends. More friends. Nice to see you. This is very much more my speed when we actually have an alley that we can just retreat back to. Make sure that we're not facing too many enemies at once. We do have a polearm user, of course, that provides its own unique issue, but at the end of the day, we can always switch over to javelins, and that solves that problem at least a wee bit. Not too bad. Let's immediately drop that ring of magical power. Probably should clean out my inventory a bit more fully, or rather not even just my inventory, but what I was actually thinking about, didn't say, but was thinking about, was clearing out our auto pickup list to make sure that we're not wasting too much time left and right fixing up that. But on the other side of that same coin, it does allow us to be slightly more cognizant of what's going on. I have to be more aware, and in that way I kind of trick my brain into not turning itself off and subjecting our character to an over-tabbed situation, because it's happened a few times on this run where I've gone pretty close to mindlessly tabbing my way into a horrifying situation, and ideally we'd like to prevent that. At the end of the day, DCSS, once you're past a certain experience level and you have a basic understanding of all the base mechanics of the game, I feel like it becomes more of a marathon rather than a a like danger fest that it is when you first start playing. And by which I just mean that it's about keeping your focus up, because a single lapse in focus can spell death for your character. But if you can keep that up for multiple hours, especially streaming it, where I'm not taking breaks and trying to continue on for as long as we can here, it definitely starts to factor into things where we just have to, how long can I keep my focus up and make sure that I'm not doing anything too stupid. Also, too bad that's a bit of a trash shop, and the rest of this, just spellbooks, eh? I mean, not horrible. We could look for a spellbook that has like apportation. Maybe use that to a decent extent. Not sure. You've been dying to Nicola. He didn't used to be so bad, but he's wrecking me now. Right, for the longest time, if you had resistance to electricity, you were fine. Nicola's totally fine. But with that new, is it chain lightning? I just made a thumbnail today because I posted a tournament play video to YouTube, and it was the one where we actually fought Nicola. And it's very true that, yeah, the game has changed, and Nicola's a lot scarier than they used to be, to say the least. Okay, I like this snake. This is the one where it has a very obvious end vault, and this one here, and we could, if we were feeling real sneaky. Actually, we couldn't. I was gonna say dig a hole in a creative way and try and weasel our way in to right next to the rune, but we have no wands of digging, so that's a bit of a misconception. Let's drop some crap here before we head into the bazaar, because again, for whatever reason, today's the day that I'm actively remembering to drop stuff before time portals. Let's hope that keeps up. That'd be a nice thing to maybe finally ingrained into my permanent habitual memory. Not getting my hopes up too much, of course, but let's see what we can find here, shall we? Weapons? Meh. Jewelry. This is what I'm looking for. Resistance to fire, willpower, and slay +3 is probably the ring I buy. Let's mark that right away. Almost guaranteed that I picked that up. The ring of the mackerel is actually kind of nice too. Anything that gives willpower along with other stuff, specifically in the mackerel's case, resistance to corrosion. Pretty nice. Resistance to cold and strength +3. All of these will help us out if we decide to go with slime for our third rune. So that's nice. And it's fairly likely that we'll go slime for our third rune, if just because Abyss becomes a little bit scary with a ghoul, because we can't regenerate when enemies are in sight, and in the Abyss there are almost always enemies in sight. So it becomes a really horrible game of attrition where we're just constantly lowering our health bit by bit until either we get the rune or we die. Not to say that it's the worst rune to go for. In many ways, it's pretty solid still. You might find some good stuff down there, and then at the end of the day, if you have really good defenses and you're able to quickly take out threats, don't see why not, but maybe something for us to think about when the time comes. And no matter what, the Ring of Law is being bought, I'm pretty sure. Does reduce us down to just 409 pieces of gold left, which means not buying the mackerel. Good to know. And instead, I guess we'll spend the last bits of our coin on the summoning scroll down here. This is why I waited to buy it, because I knew that there were more things I wanted to buy than there was money in existence right now. But at the end of the day, that's still a very good haul. In fact, we can immediately switch our Ring of Willpower to the Ring of Law. Let's check out full resistances, everything except for corrosion, triple pips of willpower. That's awesome to have that just ambiently on, especially in combination with reflect and see invisible also just being ambient. I don't mind that whatsoever. So let's hop back out here. Let's explore everything but the final vault area of this floor. Save that one for our final piece of work. I'm also very happy, of course, to have gotten the Phantom Mirror, because we should be set now for the next scary unique we encounter, at least ideally. That's always something to be aware of and ready to face. Even though I will say, we had that one dungeon floor that had, was it 4 or 5 uniques? I should have been counting, because one of these days I'm going to hit a record number. But far more than I would like, I guess, is the answer at the end of the day. Okay, thanks, Serpent Pal. Well, I think here we're pretty far from the end vault, so I don't mind making some noise. So I'm going to tin of tremor stones a couple times and try and clear the area around us as much as we can. Perfect. Not too bad. I guess we're not out of the thick of it yet, though. We have our Scroll of Fear if we need to panic and get out of here. Most of these buddies should be affected, not all, because there are some 2 pips there. And even then, even with a single pip enemy, it's not fully guaranteed, just very, very likely. So let's maybe bring in a friend. Perfect. And then together we can do some work. Okay, the might changes things and makes them scary again. Never mind. Not a doubt in my mind. Shouldn't have been concerned. A Blizzard Demon is a good friend to have in Snake, at the very least. Take care of all these dang old reptiles with us. Hello, friends. If you would come this way, please, and thank you. Should actually be taking more advantage of just how many javelins we have. Sure, we might eventually mulch them all if we're not careful, but it is a bit of a ways off at least. Also, oh, this is an entrance that I forgot to block myself off from. I was wondering why it looked like we were getting into the end vault when I excluded doors so carefully before. It's because this whole thing is a big old doorway. Perfect. Let's finish off the rest of the floor first. It's at least my usual routine, much like Zot 5. It's nice to clear out the floor before we deal with the scary, scary vault. If just because, that way when we have to fully retreat, we are able to use teleport scrolls a little bit more easily without having to worry about what we might run into on the rest of the floor that we get sent to. But otherwise, should be just about set to take this bad boy on. The other nice part about this end vault of Snake in particular is that enemies are a bit more spread out than they otherwise might be. A lot of the vaults are really condensed and absolutely filled with critters, versus this one, we're able to separate fights a little bit more than we otherwise might be able to, which is nice. Also happy to be able to fly and just get the heck out of here. Imagine how this fight would go if we didn't have our fire resistance. It's crazy how much damage these bad boys lay on. But not too bad, as we can hold down tab for a little bit there even. Not a great move. If they had continued to flood in, I'm sure we could have found ourselves in a regrettable position, but as it is, all is well that ends well. Can't complain. We can continually bring our friends back to our little corridor of death as well, which is fantastic. Okay. Definitely going so much smoother than I otherwise might have expected this final section to go. It's not to say that, again, bated breath, clenched teeth, making sure I don't get my hopes up too much, because all this can change in an instant. Now I'm waiting for it. A tin of tremor stones recharging is pretty solid. Now if we do get surrounded once more by a guardian serpent, we have at least half of a solution. Half just because we only recharged one of the 2 tremor stone charges, of course. But that's a short matter to fix up here, I'm sure. Take care of the hasted pal, and the rest of you can absolutely suck it. Perfect. Not too shabby whatsoever. As we continue to be flooded by end vault enemies, we're actually pretty close to finishing our clear here, all things considered. And onwards and upwards. Isn't this where the ruin is? It is indeed. So we could actually just get out of here, eh? Maybe I should, but I feel like we are all right to finish off the rest of the floor here as well. Might as well revel in the experience gained. In fact, invocations turned off, right? So that's important. Let's put unarmed combat back on, get that training up. Again, it is one of the skills that continues to benefit all the way up to level 27, so I maybe should have been doing that to a greater extent this entire time. Also, dang it, I want to be hitting more of you at once if possible. Let's aim for collateral damage. Normally something you try your best to avoid, but not so in this case. Guess that makes sense. Collateral damage amongst your enemies, I guess you're probably not generally avoiding in any situation now that I put a little bit more thought into that, but that's fine. Regardless, let's just finish these bad boys off, shall we? There we go. That's the dream javelin shot too. Love to see it. That should be just about it. I guess the one disadvantage to Snake is it doesn't have much of a treasure vault, even though, now that I think about it, none of the S branches have amazing treasure vaults. I'm getting them conflated a little bit with the later sections of the game, like Elf, where we really get to take advantage of beautiful finales. And speaking of which, we never did go back to Orc. So let's clear through the rest of Orc, shall we? Get some more shops that we have absolutely no money to spend on. But at the end of the day, should be able to get some good loot, all things considered. Do I just duke this out? Could use a condenser vein to simplify the issues that I want the condenser vein up and running for the final vault on Orc 2 probably as well. Now let's do it though. Let's clear out the entrance, just simplify things, make sure that we don't die in a horribly stupid way, and we can instead just die in the usual amount of stupid. Though, of course, no guarantees. Might be all good. Hello, my sorcerer friend. How's it going? Much harder to hit than I might otherwise like, but there we go. We also called a lot of attention to ourselves, which is actually kind of nice. We can just sit on these stairs. Let all of them come this way. The Warlord here is a bit of a pain in the rear, but let's bring them upstairs alone, shall we? Should be able to take them out one-on-one, no problem. And in fact, we do. We can continue to just split these groups up, little by little here. In fact, don't know, I was breaking out strategically there to potentially run, but we should be able to tab our way through most of these sons of guns. Nurgle, not actually that big of a threat now that I think about it. Oh, not at all. Because spectral stuff is our forte in terms of taking them on. I guess we'll still maybe let Nurgle make their way closer to the stairs here, save us a little bit of trouble. I guess other option is to just switch over to javelins. It might just take a few solid hits here in order to take out the named buddy themselves, and in fact it does. We can switch over to just tap, 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 tap. Perfect. Much like I always like to comment on, anytime you're able to skip a section of the game past where, you know, it's generally not intended, I won't say, but suggested to go there, such as us going through Orc now when we're already in a fairly decent spot in terms of power level, just feels so nice. Little bit of an easing of the tension, at least for this floor, not to mention, or not to say, that Orc 2 might not be a complete disaster area. We'll see how it goes, but ideally, able to make it through with at least slightly less stress than we were just dealing with at the end of our S branches. You know, even those were slightly better than I'm used to, just because I so often try and force it before exploring the rest of the dungeon. So there is that. So we're able to just one-shot most of these bad boys with our boomerangs alone. You do love to see that. Should have saw that one coming too. Whoops. But hey, we have amazing shielding, so packs of centaurs, eat your friggin' heart out. In fact, this is the ranged enemy final vault. Oh, I feel sorry for you all. That is a shame, to say the least. Welcome to your own nightmare. Of course, spawned by your own creation and everything. Let's maybe call in a friend or two early on here, losing more health to our own abilities than we have to enemies up until that point, or than we had at least. And what else can we do here? It's nice having the allies as nice easy switch targets like that, able to take ourselves out of the hot zone a little bit at the very least. Head back up to the stairs, and now we can retreat out if things start to turn sour. In fact, probably now's about the time when I would like to. That way we never fall below half health, make sure we're in a safe spot, and we can continually just rinse and repeat, do a little bit of ye old classic stair dancing techniques. With some exceptions where we will wait for our enemies to crowd in. I can't believe how often I've gone this end vault on Orc lately. It seems to be the only one I ever see. Which, again, definitely not complaining. It usually, in my experience, has fewer of these gosh darn high priests, at least. Not to say there are none, as we obviously see before us now, but definitely fewer than we otherwise might, just because they try and fill up to the brim with as many arbalists and gosh darn centaurs as they possibly can. You know, yeah, I'll focus down the sorcerer. Oh, that's so satisfying. Anytime you one-hit an enemy at this stage in the game, and especially an enemy that's normally a huge threat, absolute music to my ears. Also, we're getting to the stage where pretty much every orc warrior down here has a polearm. That's interesting. At least sometimes they stupidly close the gap while I go upstairs. That's nice. It's very convenient that they take such steps just to help us out. They really are good pals, these orcs. Oh, that buddy killed themselves. Whoops. And that should be most of it, just because we did have a mark trap, so we should have drawn most of the attention towards us. Oh, except for you. Hello, friend. Also switch over to our boomerangs here. And not too shabby. What have we got? Another blinking scroll. Don't mind if I do. We've also replenished our gold pieces just by going through the section of the game. Love to see it. We have a lot of fear scrolls, so I might hold off on buying those, but I really want those summoning scrolls. Let's just see what else is for sale, maybe before we splurge. Another blinking. Oh gosh, I'm scared. What are you gonna do to me, game? You're giving me too many good things. An air amulet? I mean, not for this character, but I didn't know there were air enhancers. Huh. That's very cool. I guess probably just this one, because this is most likely an unrand art with a name like that. When the name fits so nicely with the effects, I usually assume that it's an unrand art. That's very cool. And inaccuracy wouldn't mean much if you were an air elementalist either. Such a shame that it shows that it's up on this run, but of course, the only way that things work in this game. The only time it would show up is on a run that wasn't able to make use of it. But let's buy this other blinking scroll and both of these summoning scrolls, and that should bring us up to a fairly decent spot. In fact, I'll even buy this magic mapping scroll on top of that. And that brings us, yeah, to 5 blinking, we have 5 fear, and we have 7 summoning scrolls. If I can save all of these for Zot 5, that can win us the day alone in Zot 5. I guess depending on what we summon in, but such is the way. That is something you haven't seen before either. Yeah, it definitely is a rarer unrand art than I'm used to. I might have... There's a little tinkling in the back of my brain, because I know at one point I went through the wiki at like Crawl Forge and looked at all the unrand arts, because I was like, I never see any of these show up. I might as well find out what they do. So that's how I know like what Gyre and Gimbal is, but I've never actually seen Gyre and Gimbal in a game, unfortunately. Which is a shame, too bad, because it looks like so much fun. Especially, I mean, the ideal situation there would be to find Gyre and Gimbal on a Formicid and be able to use it with a shield. That'd be sweet, but I won't ask for too much. Just sometime it'd be nice to have it show up. Ideally on a run that could make use of it without sacrificing all of my ability to survive. A treasure trove for 6 scrolls of blinking. Good trade. Even trade, baby. Totally worth it, right? I imagine if you mega zig to a certain point, I've never gone to the stage of mega zigging on a character where I just have infinite resources. But it definitely seems that way so often when I read people's accounts and recounting of their Mega Zig experiences, because it's just like, oh, if you find yourself in this kind of ziggurat floor, you just blink your way to the exit, and just do that every time you get that type of floor. My brain immediately goes like, oh, what if you get that floor like twice in a row? Isn't that a lot of blinking scrolls? But of course, if you're mega zigging, and I guess also like abyss or pan scumming as well, ideally you can get to the point in the game where you have a functionally infinite, I'll say, number of blinking scrolls. But it's a dream that I can only imagine. I think I've only ever cleared 2 ziggurats, and that's with the character that is currently ongoing. So I should actually just play them at some point, go back and see what else we can, or how many more we can pull through on. But haven't ever gone to the point where, yeah, just swimming in resources. You've gone Gyre and Gimbal a few times, but never used them because your character is not a stabber. Yeah, I guess that is probably one of the more major uses, right? There's a manual in here. Another manual of fighting. Huh. I mean, we did use up some of our current manual that we see online here, so we might want that in the future. That could come in handy. Interesting. But yeah, is Gyre and Gimbal only truly useful on a full stabber character? I thought that might happen. Nothing we could do about it, though. So I always assumed that their enchantment rating alone, as long as you weren't relying on a shield, and the fact that, I guess short blades in general, you would only really be training on a stabber now that I think about it, and that's probably what you were going for. But my dream is to have it on a Formicid, and have a Formicid that just has 2 different daggers and 2 hands over here and a giant shield over there. That'd be sweet. You mean Iron Gimbal are quick blades? Yeah, no, it definitely are. But I always assumed that they were strong enough to potentially be of use regardless of stage or what type of character you were playing. Even if you weren't full stabber, it would still be a really nice, you know, overall damage output or something of the like. But again, no personal experience, so what can I say? In Spindart, you've only done Zig once, and that was with Absolute Zero. The layout seemed to really favor certain abilities such as Ignition. Definitely. Yeah, and in fact, having my personal favorite combo is to have Ignition and Infestation. Because then if there are even a few enemies that are weak, or not even weak, but just affected by fire, you just infest the whole place, blow them up with Ignition, and then you have a veritable army of Death Scarabs at your beck and call, just absolutely slaughtering the rest of the floor, regardless of any vulnerabilities or the like. So that's my favorite combo. Mixed in occasionally, the character that I have running does have Tornado up online, I should say, because that character is in version 0.25, I believe. And that's a nice one to occasionally resort to if all other options fail, because it is at least unresistible damage. And that version is, of course, before Absolute Zero was added, so I've still never actually done a run that got Absolute Zero up and running now that I think about it. Always wanted to, and I played so many Ice Elementalists in 0.27, and I just never got Absolute Zero on one that got to a decent stage in the game. And I've won with a couple of Ice Elementalists, but again, just never fortunate enough to get the spell that I oh so desired. Everyone was always talking about how overpowered it was. Never got the chance to shine on my end. Oh gosh. High Priest and a Demonologist. Up to all kinds of crap back here, I see. Well, let's finish off one of those bad boys if we can. Perfect. Not too bad. Should be able to get the other as well. At the end of the day, Gyre and Gimbal still are just a stabbing weapon that is not so impactful against high AC enemies. That's a great point. I do constantly find myself having to switch over to long blades at some point in most of my short blade runs, if just to deal with that simple fact, unfortunately. Flavor be danged. Only so far it gets us. Not to say that I won't sacrifice a run or two to the gods of theme and flavor, because we've seen me do that multiple times here. And in fact, just last week, I did just that. I do like me some silly fun. Less so in this series, or at least I tried to do it less so in this series, even though, again, last week, very good exception to what I was just saying. It's important to have some silly runs every once in a while. One of the beauties of not being consistently incredible with the game, I have my moments of doing all right, such as, yeah, the one time that we were able to get a 4-win victory streak. The only time I've gone that many wins in a row, for sure, and I got to do it on camera, which is awesome. But other than that, because I'm oftentimes throwing away promising characters to stupid results, I usually don't have a problem in getting a little silly with it. That's why you love Sif Muna, because the good play, you will eventually have all the spells in the game, and you can build the character with spells however you please. That is very true, yeah. Yeah, because Behemoth can do similar things for sure if you are just looking for like the level 9 damage spells, but I do really like that idea and thought, where with Sif Muna, you can really mix and match, and especially if you have a whole lot of amnesia scrolls and can kind of mix it up throughout your run and try out different combinations. That sounds like a whole lot of fun to me, especially since it falls along a similar line of reasoning as to why I love the Genie class or species so much. Just because if you have the option to mix up your loadout and try out all these different things, then you might actually find an incredible combination that you just never really thought to try or had the opportunity to try before. And that is what these games are all about, is figuring out new possibilities and what can get you out of a pickle the next time that you find yourself in a tough situation. All about learning, whatever form that takes, even if that's just having a bit of fun until you figure something out. I also should be starting to pay a little bit of attention here as we move through Elf, because this is where we might start seeing some holy branded weapons in the hands of very capable foes, and that is very scary for me. Okay, that's not Holy Wrath, that's good. Just a wee bit of protection. And again, we'll visit all these weapon stores, even though it's very unlikely we will take anything from them. We could, at the end of the day, take something like this mace that has corrosion. Wouldn't be horrible. In fact, I'll mark it just in case. And we'd be using it, of course, as just a stat stick somewhere like slime, because all of our other resistances are maxed out. And that way we could just resort on pure throwing, or pure evocables and throwing rather, and make decent headway without having to sacrifice one of our current rings that has given us really nice all-rounder stats. Something to think about at the very least. Do hate that the auto fight doesn't always go for the ones I want, but hey, that's the price we pay for convenience. And I in no way blame it, because it would be an incredible mess and actually impossible. You'd have to self-code an AI if you wanted it to always attack the targets that you would focus down in any given situation, right? What kind of gloves are you? Gloves of stealth? Not worth covering my nails. We're getting close to the point in the game, especially as our unarmed training continues to rise, that is. We are more likely to switch out to a really nice set of gloves, if just to take away a little bit of advantage that we get from nails, but that's a depreciating amount as we get better and better naturally on our own. And we can instead resort to the extra effect, whatever that may be, from a nice set of worm gloves. Plus the dungeon gets chilly, and I have bad circulation in my hands, so we do what we can. So I love Reflection so much. My favorite ego in the game, probably. Killing strong enemies with one shot and reflecting things back into enemies are the two most satisfying experiences that I personally find I encounter in the game. So I like this entrance to the Hall of Blades. All ranged units, that's really fun. That's Elf 2, all done and finished. Perfect. We'll keep heading down. Ideally, Find something nice on our final elf floor here in the treasure vaults at the end. Something to round out our build before we make the final plunge through the dungeon depths. But let's get ourselves just slightly surrounded here. Can bring some friends upstairs, deal with them the old-fashioned way. And let's actually try a different stairwell. Maybe it'll be slightly more amiable of a starting position. It's a little bit rough to be completely surrounded in a wide open chamber. Not the ideal positional spot to be in the game here. Let's see. Dang it. So many jewelry shops. Not a drop to drink. No artifact amulets that intrigue me beyond a cursory look. Such a shame, too bad. Also, what the heck is in here? Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's run here. That's really fun. Just a potion of curing and maybe some gold. I mean, it's not a problem to beat you guys, but I gotta keep telling myself, I don't have any wands of digging. What was I hoping to achieve? But all is well. I guess we'll just continue on. Have fighting my way up, maybe a bit more than I should. Let's see, Halberd of Freezing, +4 Rapier. Okay, no brands that I'm absolutely frightened of. That's good. Always a good thing. Let's back off into a bit of a corridor, though. There's no reason why we should be fighting all these elves in a big old chamber. Once more, that's not the ideal situation for us to find ourselves in. Hit another level, though. That's pretty sweet. And I do love the amount of health that we gain off kills. When we get both our innate healing ability and McCleb's heal, we get a huge chunk back on each enemy. Not too shabby whatsoever. And we're finally back up to a decent number of heal wounds potions as well, since we haven't been forced to resort to them in a decent while here, which is fantastic. Man, I wonder, where is the final vault here? I'm getting a wee bit concerned, just that we haven't run into the precursors of it. Most namely being special types of walls is what I usually look out for. So I'm guessing at some point we're gonna... Ah, there we go. Special types of walls. Would you look at that? Okie dokie. 2 fancy dancy buddies. I guess the Deep Elf Archer had the +10 trident and the fancy robe and the Ring of Tortoise. Ooh, that's a fun unrand art. I don't know if we'll need it for this character. 8 AC won't help us too much in the final sections of the game, but that is a fun one to say the least. Let's try and bring some of you back with us, shall we? This is a nice position for us to be in general, just because if things start to take a really bad turn, we'll call in assistance from the Kleb here and use them to clog up the hallway behind us and make a run for the nearest stairwell. Plus, ideally, we can deal with some of the trickier spellcasters at a distance by leaving some of the melee elves between the two of us. It's a much more preferable way to take out that Annihilator specifically. As I kind of regret my decision, since this Blade Master is starting to do a number on us, actually. In fact, I think this is where we call our shot. Leave you to run slight interference. Not very much, eh? Let's say one more. The Blade Master, of course, being slightly faster than everyone else, but that's fine. They can come up with us. We will bring them along. Perfect. And now we want to be a little bit careful. Let's not die stupidly, shall we? You, my friend, can deal a whole lot of damage if you hit with both of those. Only 25% chance to hit us. It's better than I thought, actually, but... The issue is that I wanted to potentially try and summon in one more friend, but we don't have decent or great health for that right now. So instead, might read a teleport scroll. Perfect. Then I'm going to chug a couple curing to just keep us right above the one-hit death range here. In fact, 1 heal wounds just to play it safe. And let's teleport out of there. Where did we leave you, friend? Just above us. Okay, let us run to another stairs and we'll heal up here. Perfect. And not too bad. Should be in a slightly better position to take you on now. Ooh, maybe not. Let's bring in one friend. Jeez Louise, those Blade Masters do a number if we get unlucky.